Without warning, Princess Eugenie vanished from royal duties, her name scrubbed from official schedules, her presence erased overnight. The palace offered no answers, only a cold line about security concerns. But behind the silence, a scandal the royal family couldn't contain. Secret meetings, leaked photos, a forbidden connection to a shadowy foreign figure. And just like that, Eugenie, once the image of modern royalty, was out. Her downfall came fast, brutal, and public. Was it love, betrayal, or something far more dangerous? As the palace tightens its grip, Eugenie's silence is deafening, and the truth may be bigger than anyone expected. Princess Eugenie removed without warning. It all started quietly, too quietly. Early one morning, royal staff received urgent notices. Princess Eugenie's official duties were suspended. No explanation, no warning. Her name was wiped clean from the royal calendar. Meetings were cancelled. Public appearances scrubbed. Even her digital profile on the official royal site started disappearing. Insiders were stunned. Some thought it was a mistake. Others feared something far worse. But by midday, one thing was clear. Eugenie was gone, without a trace. There were no statements, no press releases, just silence. Phone lines at her Kensington office rang unanswered. Personal aides were told to stand down. Security tightened overnight. One palace source called it a communication blackout. Another said, "Even we don't know what's going on." Eugenie herself was blindsided. Friends say she found out the same way the rest of the world did, by seeing her name missing from the schedule. One staffer reportedly said she kept asking what was happening. No one could give her an answer. All the palace offered was a vague line: security and protocol concerns. That's it. Nothing more. For someone who had never stirred public scandal before, the move felt extreme, sudden and cold, and yet it was only the beginning. Because behind this quiet erasure was a secret the palace could no longer hide. The affair that triggered her fall. For weeks, there had been whispers, but no one imagined this. Princess Eugenie was seen meeting a foreign businessman in secret cafes around London. Not once, multiple times. At first, it looked innocent, just quiet conversations, always away from the public eye. But then came the photos. Leaked by a private source, they showed Eugenie and the man embracing closely in a dimly lit restaurant. In one, his hand was around her waist. In another, what looked like a kiss. That was enough to send the palace into panic mode. The man, still unnamed by officials, wasn't just any businessman. He was reportedly linked to offshore funds and flagged in international finance investigations. He wasn't just controversial, he was risky. Inside royal circles, the mood changed instantly. What seemed like a personal matter was suddenly viewed as a security threat. One aide reportedly said, "It wasn't just about love, it was about loyalty." And the timing couldn't have been worse. With royal reputation already on edge post-Megxit, any hint of scandal felt explosive. The story spread quietly at first. A few journalists caught wind. Palace officials hoped to keep it quiet. Too late. Because the pictures? They didn't stay secret for long. Global headlines and instant shame. Within hours of the leak, the media exploded. "Princess Pariah" blared across British tabloids. US outlets picked it up by morning. Social media caught fire. Eugenie Exposed became a top trend on X and Instagram. Every news cycle dissected the same questions. Was it love or carelessness? Was this betrayal or a desperate escape. Eugenie said nothing, not a single statement, no denial, no explanation, just silence. And somehow, that silence made it worse. The public reaction was brutal. Some were shocked. Others were angry. Even her fans didn't know what to believe. Experts flooded the airwaves. Royal watchers, former aides, PR analysts, everyone had a theory. Some called it a private affair. Others warned it could cause permanent damage to the monarchy. Meanwhile, inside the palace, the phones never stopped ringing. Officials were scrambling to control the narrative, but the damage was already done. One photo, one moment, and Eugenie's royal world was collapsing. What was once quiet scandal had become a global spectacle, and for Eugenie, there was no going back. The rule she broke, and its cost. There are rules in the royal family, unspoken but unbreakable, and Eugenie broke one. While royals were expected to live with grace and duty, they are also expected to avoid any ties that could threaten national security or public trust. Eugenie knew this. She'd grown up inside the system. But when she let emotion lead, she crossed a line the firm couldn't ignore. Insiders say it wasn't just the romance that caused alarm, it was who she was with. Her companion's shady financial ties, especially to offshore accounts and foreign interests, immediately triggered concern from Whitehall. A security memo was reportedly circulated within hours, warning of potential blackmail risks. It wasn't speculation. It was considered a serious breach. Suddenly, Eugenie, once the quiet royal, the modern princess with a clean record, was being treated as a vulnerability, a threat. One advisor reportedly told King Charles, "If we ignore this, we invite more." That's when the real damage began. In private, Eugenie was furious. She insisted nothing illegal had happened. She begged for a chance to explain herself, but the palace had already moved. The message was clear. No excuses, no second chances. Her role wasn't just suspended, it was stripped. She was taken off engagements. Communications were blocked. Even longtime allies inside the firm stayed silent. No one was willing to stand by her publicly. Not yet. Eugenie had broken a sacred rule. She put her heart above her crown. And the cost was swift, cold, and devastating. Emotional breakdown behind palace walls. After the headlines hit, Eugenie disappeared from view. But behind the walls of her Kensington residence, the real story was unfolding, and it was heartbreaking. Staff described the mood inside her home as heavy, curtains drawn, doors shut, silence. A royal once known for her bubbly warmth and humor had gone still. Friends say she spent hours alone, refusing to see anyone beyond her immediate family. One staff member reportedly heard screaming, followed by sobs, echoing through the halls. She allegedly told her inner circle, "They didn't even let me explain. They just erased me, Mary." The emotional toll was visible. She wasn't sleeping. She barely ate. Those close to her said her biggest pain wasn't the public scandal. It was the feeling of betrayal. She had stood by her family through every storm, and now, in her lowest moment, she was left alone. Some in the palace tried to reach out quietly, but by then, Eugenie had shut down. Even her usually open social media accounts went completely dark. Not a single photo, not a single caption. Just silence. She had just given birth weeks earlier. She had planned time to heal, to bond with her newborn son. Instead, she was now dealing with a royal exile she never saw coming. What hurt the most wasn't the headlines. It was how quickly she'd become a stranger to the institution she was born into. Royals in conflict, discipline versus empathy. As the scandal grew louder, so did the divide inside the palace. An emergency meeting was called at Clarence House. Present, King Charles, Prince William, and Princess Catherine. The mood? Tense, divided, urgent. Charles, visibly angered by the headlines, believed swift action was the only way to protect the crown. For him, the monarchy had already taken too many hits, and showing mercy could look like weakness. He reportedly said, "The line must be drawn. The public won't forgive another scandal." But Catherine saw things differently. Sources say she urged understanding. She reminded them that Eugenie had always been loyal, always tried to modernize the role without stepping out of bounds. "She made a mistake," Kate reportedly said, "but she's not a threat. She's family." William, caught in the middle, leaned toward protecting the monarchy, but was said to have listened closely to his wife. The conversation grew emotional. Some advisors warned that pushing Eugenie out completely could create deeper fractures in the royal family, especially among the younger generation. Others insisted the damage had already been done, and the public needed to see accountability. They all agreed on one thing: the firm had to appear united in public. But behind palace doors, the cracks were widening. One insider revealed, "It was the first time in months they all looked like they were standing in different rooms." What should have been a simple decision, discipline or empathy, was now tearing the family in two. And Eugenie, whether they liked it or not, had become the center of a storm none of them saw coming. Camilla's unforgiving stance. Charles hesitates. As the pressure mounted, one voice in the palace rang louder than the rest: Camilla's. From the moment the scandal broke, insiders say Queen Camilla made her position painfully clear. Eugenie had to go. There was no room for hesitation, no time for sympathy. She believed any softness would backfire. "If we don't control the story," she reportedly warned, "the story controls us." Camilla pushed for total removal. Quiet distancing wouldn't be enough. She wanted Eugenie stripped of her duties, her title frozen, her presence erased from royal planning. And for a time, Charles agreed. He followed her lead, determined to show firm leadership. But as the fallout grew louder and more emotional, he began to waver. What started as anger turned into unease. Behind the scenes, the backlash was growing. Polls showed public opinion beginning to shift. Sympathy was building, not for the monarchy's discipline, but for Eugenie's sudden erasure. The public didn't see a threat. They saw a mother, a daughter, a royal left in the cold. Charles began questioning the damage done. Was Camilla right to move so fast? Or had they been too harsh? Advisors were now divided. Some urged him to stay firm. Others whispered that the punishment had outpaced the crime. What started as an act of control was now spinning into emotional chaos. And through it all, Eugenie said nothing. Her silence made it harder to attack her, and harder to ignore the pain behind it. The king was torn. Camilla refused to back down, and the once clear path forward was suddenly murky. The fall of the modern royal. Before all this, Eugenie was the relatable one. The royal who posted silly photos, shared her struggles, laughed at herself. She walked barefoot at garden parties, spoke openly about her scoliosis surgery, and balanced royal life with motherhood and charity work. She wasn't trying to be perfect, just real. And that's exactly why the public loved her. So when the scandal broke, it hit differently. This wasn't a distant royal getting caught. This was someone people connected with. Her fall didn't feel like a rule being broken. It felt like watching someone crash under the weight of something they didn't see coming. Her vulnerability, her openness, what once made her a breath of fresh air, suddenly became part of the tragedy. Old photos resurfaced, smiling moments from hospital visits, children's charities, and family holidays. Posts she once shared with joy now flooded timelines with a sense of loss. The public didn't just see scandal. They saw a story unraveling, and it made the silence around her feel even heavier. Palace statements remained cold and formal. No apologies, no warmth, just protocol. But the world watching didn't want formality. They wanted humanity. And Eugenie, the once modern face of a centuries-old institution, had vanished from view like she'd never been there at all. What was once a fresh chapter for the monarchy had now closed with no warning and no farewell. The security threat that changed everything. Behind all the emotion, there was a darker reason for the palace's sudden response. It wasn't just about love, it was about danger. The man at the center of Eugenie's scandal wasn't only romantically linked, he was financially suspicious. Ties to shell companies, mentions in flagged offshore accounts, whispered connections to foreign influence groups. For MI5 and royal security, it wasn't just embarrassing, it was a red flag. Sources say intelligence officials began tracking communications the moment photos leaked. Concerns of blackmail, coercion, and influence surfaced. Could Eugenie have been manipulated? Was this connection accidental, or part of something deeper? Security protocols inside the palace went into overdrive. Background checks were ordered. Meetings were held. Even internal access points, emails, movement logs, staff permissions were suddenly re-reviewed. One source said bluntly, it became an issue of national interest. The public didn't know all the details, but the palace did. And when the stakes were that high, the firm chose safety over sentiment. That's why no explanation was given publicly. That's why Eugenie's duties were yanked so fast. It wasn't just a broken rule, it was a potential threat to the country's reputation and stability. Still, even with that reality, questions remained. Was the risk real or exaggerated? Was Eugenie naive or simply unlucky? No one could say for sure. But behind the headlines and heartbreak, a storm of classified concern had shaken the palace walls. And once that door was opened, there was no turning back. A mother caught in the storm. What the world often forgets is this. Eugenie had just given birth. Barely weeks before the scandal exploded, she welcomed her second son, Ernest George Ronnie, into the world. It should have been a quiet, joyful time. Healing from childbirth, adjusting to sleepless nights, creating memories with her husband and their growing family. Instead, she was thrown into the biggest crisis of her life. Friends say her entire summer had been mapped out with care. She planned to stay low-key, mostly at Frogmore Cottage, away from the buzz of central London. Just some time to bond with her boys, rest her body, and reconnect with close friends. No press, no drama, just motherhood. But fate had something else in mind. The headlines broke before she even had a chance to breathe. Overnight, her name was everywhere. TV panels dissecting her personal life, online forums flooding with judgment, paparazzi outside her gates, and in the middle of it all, a newborn crying in the night and a toddler asking for his mum. She didn't have time to react the way most people would. No privacy, no space, no real support. Friends say she immediately shut down. Her protective instincts kicked in. She went into survival mode. Every decision was now about her sons. Those close to her noticed the shift instantly. She spoke less, saw fewer people. Even longtime friends said it was hard to get a reply. Her inner world shrank. It became just her and the children. A protective bubble she refused to let the outside world puncture. There were no official statements, no media rebuttals, not a single public appearance. And yet, she was still there, rocking her baby at 3 a.m., wiping away tears no one could see. She's not just upset, a family friend shared. She's grieving, not just for her reputation, but for the peace that was stolen from her family. She didn't get to enjoy her newborn's first weeks, not fully, not freely. The scandal took that from her. But what it couldn't take was her role as a mother. Some believe that's what's keeping her grounded. The bond she shares with her sons, simple, quiet, unconditional, might be the very thing that pulls her back from the edge. Because even now, as the firm turns its back and the press circles like vultures, Eugenie clings to one truth. She's still their mother. And in a world that stripped her of titles, status, and standing, that's the one crown they can't take away. Prince Harry's silent alliance. While most of the royal family distanced themselves from Eugenie, one name kept coming up behind closed doors: Prince Harry. He didn't release a statement. He didn't post a message. But insiders say he reached out the moment the story broke. Quietly. Directly. No palace, no protocol. Just family. It wasn't a surprise. Of all the royals, Harry and Eugenie have always shared a unique bond. They grew up together. They confided in each other. Through weddings, scandals, exits, and upheavals, their connection stayed intact. Even after Harry left royal life, Eugenie remained close. She visited him in California. She met Meghan early on. She never chose sides. She chose him. And now, as Eugenie faced the same cold silence Harry once did, he was one of the only ones who understood exactly how it felt. Sources close to Harry say he was furious. Not just shocked, but genuinely angry. One friend reportedly heard him say, "They did to her what they did to me. Cut her off. No explanation. Just gone." The pattern was too familiar. Sudden isolation, public silence, private confusion. A storm that hits without warning and leaves no time to defend yourself. Insiders believe Harry offered a safe haven immediately. A home in Montecito. A break from the madness. Time to breathe. A chance to heal where headlines couldn't reach. Some say it was more than just a gesture. It was an open invitation to leave the pain behind. Others claim he's also considering something public. A joint appearance. A single photo. Something subtle but powerful enough to say, she's not alone. He knows the weight of being cast out. And he knows how quickly public perception can change when loyalty becomes visible. For Harry, it's deeply personal. And for Eugenie, it might be the lifeline she desperately needs. Because they're not just cousins. They're two royals pushed to the sidelines by their own blood. Two people who gave their loyalty to a system that didn't give it back. And now, their connection, quiet, steady, and unbroken, may become the loudest message yet. They don't need a press release. They don't need the palace's approval. Because in a family that often forgets to choose heart over hierarchy, Harry chose her. And together, their silence may speak louder than the crown ever expected public divided, but growing sympathetic. At first, the reaction was harsh. People were shocked, angry, Some called her reckless. Others labeled her disloyal. But as the days passed, something changed. The conversation started to shift, and it shifted fast. Comments turned softer. Headlines turned reflective. Polls began showing more sympathy than scorn. The public started asking a new question. Was the punishment worse than the mistake? Eugenie's silence played a big part. She didn't lash out, didn't defend. She stayed quiet. And in that silence, people saw something deeper: hurt, grief, real emotion. Mothers related to her. Young women admired her strength. Even longtime royal critics began to question whether the palace had overreacted. The mood online changed too. Hashtags like #JusticeForEugenie and #LetHerSpeak started trending. Even some public figures chimed in, calling the exile brutal and disproportionate. People weren't asking for perfection anymore. They were asking for honesty. And suddenly, Eugenie, once buried under scandal, began to look less like a villain and more like a victim of the system. The firm, always careful with optics, now faced a growing dilemma. If they stuck to silence, they risked appearing cold. If they welcomed her back too quickly, they'd look weak. The public wanted truth, not spin, not statements, just answers. And now they weren't just watching, they were waiting. What happens now? Disgrace or rebirth? No one knows what Eugenie will do next, not even the palace. Behind the scenes, there are whispers of a quiet relocation. Not just a short escape, but a permanent move abroad. California, Spain, even whispers of Portugal. Somewhere far from London, far from cameras, and far from the institution that pushed her out. Then, there's the other rumor, the one that has palace aides sweating. A tell-all interview. Nothing's confirmed. But some say international networks are already making offers. If she speaks, it won't be just about the affair. It'll be about everything. The silence, the betrayal, the emotional collapse behind royal walls. A story the firm can't control. But not everyone inside the palace wants her gone forever. Her sister Beatrice is said to be lobbying quietly for her return. She's urging Charles to reconsider, offering compromise, options, a path back. If not now, then in the near future. Eugenie, for her part, is torn. Friends say she's still grieving the way things ended. She's angry, but she's not bitter. She still believes in her role, still believes in the value of service. But pride holds her back. And trust? That will take time. What comes next could be redemption or a full break from the crown. Either way, one thing is certain. Whatever Eugenie does next, the world will be watching. Eugenie's royal future hangs in limbo, torn between loyalty, love, and survival. As the world watches, one question remains. Will she fight for her place or walk away forever? One thing's clear. This scandal isn't just about a princess. It's about power, silence, and the cost of stepping out of line.